Mr. Rob Bennett. I'm a Division 12 member of the Mid-Central region of the NMRA. I'm here today with Mr. Bill Schopf and Mr. Richard Bradley, also members of Division 12. And what we're going to do for you today, Dick has got many, many decades of experience in the model railroading hobby and in the NMRA. We thought it'd be very interesting to sit down, talk with him, ask him some questions, get some of his knowledge, experience, and understand some of the things that he's noticed change over the history of model railroading and the NMRA. So sit back, enjoy. I'm going to hop behind the camera. Bill's going to take care of the interview, and we hope you enjoy this interview with Mr. Dick Bradley, who is Master Model Railroader number 37.
All right, we're here today with Dick Bradley, a member of the Allegheny Western Division of the Mid-Central region. Dick has been an NMRA member pretty much since 1951, with an exception through the late 50s and the early 60s. He rejoined, I believe, in 1962.
Right.
And he has been a lifetime member, I believe, lifetime member 886, a lifetime member. So he really has been a member of the NMRA for 70 years, with the exception of just a few years. He received his Master Model Railroader achievement in 1971.
Right.
He had 8 certificates. He is Master Model Railroader number 37. So we are here today to interview him about some of his experiences in his perceptions in model railroading and the NMRA and just the hobby. So I have some questions, and we'll just let Dick take it from there. So the first question for you, Dick, looking back at your 70-some years in the hobby, how do you think model railroading as a hobby has made a difference in your life?
Oh, it's made a great deal of difference. I have made so many friends, acquaintances. Some of them have been lifelong, good, close relationships. We still exchange Christmas cards and other messages. The fellowship through the NMRA is the principal reason, I think, for the NMRA to exist.
Okay, all right. As a master model railroader, have doors opened to you over the years that they might not have? If
No.
You didn't have that, or does that really make any difference?
It doesn't make any difference to me. I don't wear a badge that says Master Model Railroader.
Is that 37 on your pocket?
No.
All right. Why did you decide to pursue, I know you've said that it wasn't really that important to you to get it, but you did pursue it. Why did you finally decide to pursue the achievement of the MMR?
Well, once again, the word pursue is not quite right. I didn't pursue it. I did things that I wanted to do, aspects of model railroading, participating in the NMRA Mid-Eastern region and other region activities that I enjoyed, building models that I liked, that they happened to gain points or hours or various awards along the way. Okay, fine. Yes, I filled out some papers and was urged to fill out statements of qualifications and so forth, and eventually awards came and I became a model railroader. But I didn't pursue Master Model Railroader as a thing in itself. I just enjoyed model railroading.
What would you say to someone who perhaps could achieve, or who perhaps had done the work, say, to achieve an achievement program award, say, in electricity or civil engineering, but didn't necessarily have the motivation or wondered whether they should do it or not? What advice would you give someone to continue with this, or just to do it on their own?
Well, the advice that I do give, as I attempt to incorporate more people into the achievement program is let us recognize what you've done. Let you write it up, and we will give you a certificate and recognition for what you have done.
Do you think that the interest in the achievement program and the Master Model Railroader program, is it declining today, or do you think there's more interest in it today than maybe it was when you obtained yours 50 years ago? Do you see a difference at all?
I think there's definitely a greater participation in it, mostly because it is being more greatly publicized in the NMRA Magazine and to a certain extent pushed at the regional level. We have achievement program chairman who apparently is supposed to help us get more achievement awards.
Okay. I know you told me earlier, but do you want to tell us the notoriety that you received in 1971? Today in the NMRA magazine, there's usually in the bulletin section, there's a listing of it. In every issue, there's one or two, a couple page biographies of people who have achieved that. What was the case in 1971 when you got yours?
Well, once again, the memory of the 87-year-old begins to fail. I honestly do not remember receiving any particular notification in the NMRA bulletin of the time.
Okay. And that has changed, definitely.
Pardon?
That has changed a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoy reading about the new Master Model Railroaders in the NMRA magazine.
Okay. Can you imagine the hobby of model railroading if the NMRA did not exist?
No.
Why?
The standards.
The standards. Okay, do you want to go into that? What do you mean? I know what you mean, but why are the standards important?
The standards for interchange allow many different manufacturers and to provide equipment that works together. The standards are fundamental to the expansion of the hobby. Without it, we would have many individual companies with incompatible equipment. Lionel tried this, and many other companies, Merklin, try this. But once again, they're very limited and they don't expand the availability of stuff the way standards do.
Okay, all right. You may have already asked or answered this, but why have you stayed in the NMRA so long? You've been a member for 70 years. Why?
Well, in part, it's being a life member. I don't want to quit, you know. I just enjoy the fellowship. I enjoy participating in the activities offered by the NMRA as individuals and getting together with other people.
You said one of the most memorable conventions you went to, I think, was maybe in Southern Ohio, in the Dayton or Cincinnati area.
Yes, in one particular respect, the Cincinnati 1966 NMRA convention had a bus tour to Dayton, Ohio, the so-called Lichen Belt layouts, 3 of them. One of them was Alan McClellan's Virginia and Ohio. And in 1966, this was a very early version of the Virginia and Ohio. And in it, I saw so much that I loved. It really was the best layout I have ever seen, from the valence lighting, the Alphatronics handheld controls, and of course the West Virginia, Virginia scenery. That layout has been a continuing influence in all my model railroading.
Are there other railroads, if I had to ask you the three most memorable railroads maybe you've ever visited or seen, what might be number 2 and 3 behind Alan McClellan's?
Well, memorable, certainly. I had one opportunity at an NMRA convention to stand in the doorway and look at John Allen score and defeated for 20 minutes. Yes, very memorable. But it is not quite my style. I prefer eastern hilly railroading to western mountainous railroading. Another one at an NMRA convention, I believe it was Boston in '88. We went to George Selio's, Franklin and South Manchester. Once again, a short period of time to stand in wonder at this marvelous scenic development of a Depression-era city. But once again, it's not my particular style.
Okay. What railroads have you seen are your style other than McClellan's that you remember?
Oh dear. Tony Custer's Allegheny Midland. The Reed brothers in Chicago for their Hagerstown, Maryland.
The N-Scale Railroad?
N-Scale, Western Maryland, Pennsylvania, Norfolk Southern.
Okay. Along the same line, if the NMRA Board of Directors came to you and said, Richard Bradley, we're going to have a Model Railroaders Hall of Fame. We want you to nominate 5 people that absolutely should be in this Hall of Fame. Who do you nominate?
This is tough. Lynn Westcott for his editing at Model Railroader and the many contributions, Alberta Construction, TAT V. Lynn's for his development of DCC.
Lynn's Electronics.
I do not know his full name.
Okay.
But the German gentleman who developed DCC as part of his business that was warped into the NMRA's DCC standards.
Okay. The modelers, Alan McClellan, would he be in your list?
Certainly Alan McClellan among modelers. Among writers, Tony Custer. Okay, you got 4.
I was going to ask you for 5 more.
No.
In the half century since you received your MMR, what modelers may have had the most influence on you? And perhaps you've already answered that. You said Alan McClellan.
Alan McClellan, certainly.
Tony Custer.
And if you want to talk about negative influence,
Yes.
I've already said that there's styles of model railroading that I don't particularly want as my own, although they are great model railroads.
You mentioned to me once that your favorite comment you've ever gotten about your own railroad, when somebody said to you,
well, that was Keith Thompson from Model Railroader in May of 1994. He visited here at a layout that was previously in the basement, and he said something to the effect that this was the place, a sort of place that he would like to be to visiting railroading. That greatly pleased me because behind the scenes, as it is in effect, I have always thought I wanted to make a place that people wanted to be. A pleasant place, a nice place to look at trains, to run trains, to photograph trains.
which is why, even though you admire his modeling so much, you don't particularly like George Celios's Franklin and Manchester because you just don't want to be in a 1930s Depression era landscape?
It's not my style. It's great modeling. Look at it in individual little dioramas and part scenes, and he does tremendous work. But it's not my style.
If you had the opportunity and the time to start all over again in this hobby, would you do anything different than what you have done?
No, I have thoroughly enjoyed this trip through the hobby, the several model railroads that I've built, the tremendous friendships that I've had. No, I don't want to do anything different.
So you wouldn't change from the Maryland and Pennsylvania to the Pennsylvania or to the Northern
No.
Pacific or whatever?
No,
No regrets. No regrets at all. Okay. All right. What innovations and changes do you think in the last, or what innovations in the last half a century since 1971, you've had your Master Model Railroader achievement for 50 years. What are the major things that have happened that have changed the hobby in the last 50 years?
layout design SIG of the NMRA, operation SIG of the NMRA, DCC, the internet.
Do you think that model railroading, some people say, well, the average age of an NMRA member today is 68 years old. Some people have said model railroading as a hobby is dying. The younger generation is not coming in. In 10 or 20 years, it's not going to be anything what it used to be. Do you agree with that, that model railroading as a hobby is dying, or do you see it as alive and well?
I do not feel that model railroading as a hobby is dying. It is fragmenting. The internet now makes it possible for each of us to develop our own little tiny group of modelers with particular interests, and we don't talk to each other. It used to be the magazines, Model Railroader, Craftsman, and the many others, brought a wide variety of modeling to all model railroaders. It used to be hundreds of thousands of model railroaders, magazines distributed every month to many, many people of diverse interests. That doesn't happen anymore. One way in which model railroading is bigger is that it has more interests, more people in it, but they don't get together. We don't see them.
So
It would be wonderful if the model railroader groups could get together in some way. I remember in the 1988 NMRA convention in Boston, I believe, we joined together with O-scalers and with other groups in one convention. And it was marvelous cross-pollination. We got to know so many more people, see many other models, and get many other ideas.
So what can the NMRA as an organization do to try to slow down this fragmentation?
I don't think it should slow it down. I think it should be coordinated in a way that allows individual growth, but fosters communication among the individuals and their groups.
Any idea how to achieve that? How to accomplish that?
I don't know how to do that.
That's the
There are
problem.
many different groups. We all should get together.
And every group has its own publication.
I would wish that there would be an umbrella group. It would be marvelous if it could be the NMRA.
Okay, excellent, excellent. What do you think the NMRA, from your perspective, what do you think they should do in the future? I know you don't like to predict the future, but what do you think that they ought to do to make that organization healthier and to make the hobby model railroading healthier?
I don't predict the future.
I know you don't predict the future.
I am just a plain, ordinary member. I am not an official.
So you have no preferences or anything as to which
I
things you would-
really
Okay.
don't know how to answer that very important question.
Okay, all right. I think one of the more interesting things recently with the new president of the NMRA being from the UK, there's obviously a tremendous amount of modeling interest in Australia, among other countries. Was that international presence there in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, or is that a relatively new thing, or we just, as the internet, tapped into it?
There was certainly international activity. We did have a convention in Great Britain earlier. I don't quite remember the date of it. I did not attend. And the Australians have been growing up for a long time. We've always had good relations with the Canadians. The Chinese groups have connected with us. So there has been international involvement in the past. We have good relations with the European Standards Group. That all should continue and certainly increase if possible. The fact that the new president of the NMRA comes from Great Britain really is of no importance in this day of widespread, easy communication. His residence is unimportant.
May not want to answer this question either, but do you think, is it fair to say that the NMRA is basically an organization composed of old white guys?
I don't know the demographics.
From your experience, have you encountered a significant number of women at operating sessions at conventions, who are actively part of conventions, who are built layouts?
I do not remember a significant minority presence.
The only two I can think of off the top of my head, Mary and her late husband Bill Miller.
I've met them.
And I think there's a couple named Grocers, Ray and Renee Grosser, perhaps. If I have their name correct, I think they're maybe in the Midwest.
I'm sorry, Bill, but
Ray and Renee Grosser?
I don't know them.
Don't know that name? Okay. No. All right. Okay, to continue on, Dick, you've had a long interest in the Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad. I believe you've had 2 different National Magazine articles, at least 2, on the Maryland, Pennsylvania. Maybe in the 1970s and again in the 1990s. Am I correct?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Railroad Model Craftsman or Model Railroader, I believe. Did they do articles on the Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad, your first one, your initial?
Let's back off.
Okay.
The Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad is the real prototype that has greatly influenced me. My model railroads have always been very small, and I have never ever been able to really capture the full flavor of the Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad. I have built models of the equipment and models of some of their structures and some of their industries, but I have never really thought I could put together a good model that represented the Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad. So I have reversed the names. I call my model railroads the Pennsylvania and Maryland, P&M.
Were your initial railroads always?
Always the Pennsylvania and Maryland.
Oh, they were never the Maryland and Pennsylvania.
Right.
All right.
Now,
okay.
You referred to the term Pon Ma. I have generally tried to avoid that being a cute name. Even John Allen came to regret the Gorin defeated, and I would severely regret the Pon Ma. So I just call it the P&M, or the full name, Pennsylvania and Maryland. I was quite shocked when one of the magazines called it the Pon Ma.
What attracted you to, I knew you spent a lot of time in Philadelphia and you grew up in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area. What was it about that little Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad that attracted you so much?
The equipment, the terrain through which it ran, the types of industries which it served, the size of the railroad. It all seems to be so greatly modelable.
Okay. Were you ever attracted to, say, some of the small railroads in New England, the Central Vermont, the Rutland, some of those that are similar in size and scope, different terrain, of course? Or is it just where you grew up, the Maryland and Pennsylvania was more natural to you?
The Maryland and Pennsylvania influence came fairly early. It was well documented in George Hilton's book, and it was accessible to me. Central Vermont was not that accessible.
Okay. Now, in your Master Model Railroader, you only need 7 certificates to get that. I believe, had 8, and 6 of them were in the non-NMRA. I think one of yours was author, one was volunteer, and the other 6, I believe, were electrical and civil engineering, scenery, structures. Of all those achievement program certificates, APs you got, is there one you enjoy most? I guess the question is, what area of model railroading do you really enjoy the most?
Scenery.
Scenery.
Building buildings, making hills, trees, vegetation, putting together a scene, a diorama where it all comes together and looks coherent and believable. And that extends into the cars, locomotives. They get painted and decaled, and they are appropriately part of the railroad scene. Okay. On down to the ballast. Track is part of scenery.
What do you least like to do? You say, oh, geez, today I've got to go down and...
Least like to do?
You do it all so well, there's probably nothing you least like to do.
Well, in the end, it all gives pleasure. Even sitting down, speed matching 2 locomotives. When it's done and they run nice together, that's nice, and I can smile.
You really are a sick person if you enjoy speed matching locomotives. We have just made a discovery. Dick Bradley is insane. I want to ask you too about when your first exposure to, when you first found out about DCC, which I guess probably has been around since the early 90s maybe.
Yeah.
It was so groundbreaking for everybody. As an electrical engineer, which I believe you were, okay, electrical engineer, I believe?
I did a lot of electrical work, yes.
You remember what really fascinated you about that? I mean, that was really a groundbreaking change.
We have to go backwards for that. I saw multiple unit control without blocks on Alan McClellan's early layout. The system was called Alphatronics. And that fascinated me. And I tried to follow along with multiple train control without blocks. My first real model railroad in Wayne, Pennsylvania used blocks, but attempted to use digital controls to control the blocks. So that you didn't see them or have to use block controls. Then came other brands. I investigated such things as 01 from Great Britain, which in my opinion had too many limitations. Then along came Dynatrol, which had great interest for me, and I had the whole layout downstairs, the first one downstairs with Dynatrol, with infrared control. It worked beautifully. I adapted it for radio control using materials for aircraft. And when I'm trying to remember his name from New England, came by and introduced me to the beginnings of DCC and brought in a first prototype of a DCC command station. I immediately became much more interested, and as manufacturers came forward Digitrax and CVP and North Coast Engineering, I investigated those. And to me, DCC was the liberating form of model railroad control. Plug it in, it works. I don't have to do any electrical engineering.
Why did you choose NCE over Digitrax or Lens or any of the other systems?
The way the controls are designed. I have had people as young as 18 months run my trains. Hand them a throttle, tell them to twist the knob, and they ask what the buttons mean.
That's great. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on dead rail and the new battery, everything battery powered?
I look at it. I'm very greatly interested in it. At present, once again, you have to ask that of an 87-year-old. When it gets developed enough, and maybe I'm 95, I'll consider changing.
I will see that. I predict I will see that.
But it's not
When I were
yet
over to
ready.
video your layout, and it was 3 years ago, a week from now. It seems it couldn't have been 3 years, but it was. At that time, there was a section of it not finished.
There's still a section of it not
Oh, I was
finished.
hoping it was finished. I asked you a year ago if it was done yet. You said no. How much do you have left to do, or is it? I mean, no railroad, I guess, is ever done. Would you say yours is done, or?
No, it is not done, obviously. There's still unpainted plywood in places. I know of 2 buildings that I really must make to complete the plywood area. There's grass and other types of scenery to cover the plywood area. But otherwise, I think in the past couple of years, I've made reasonably good progress. There's a nice new scene along the back wall that I am pleased with. There's a very large industry that's coming along very well. I think I've succeeded in hiding the last black hole pretty good.
We talked about DCC earlier. In scenery, which you like a lot, what innovations in scenery have made such a difference? I mean, years ago we had lichen and we had dyed sawdust and those kinds of things. What do you most enjoy in some of the new scenery products? Which ones do you like the most?
Super trees are great. Scenic Express has introduced so many neat things. The sill floor materials for grass and weeds and stuff are great. Woodland Scenics has come along with tremendous new ideas. Some of their water effects are excellent. So yeah, scenery materials have been a tremendous development.
All right, we'd like to thank Dick for doing this for us today.
And I'd like to thank you and Bill and Rob for coming by.
We really enjoyed it, and I think what we most look forward to now is wrapping this up and going down and seeing your railroad.
Sure, let's all go downstairs.
All right, well, let's go visit the P&M and enjoy ourselves on a beautiful Pennsylvania day.